Hey there, YouTube. Eric Carthage here. Wanted to bring you a match against Zaraganis here. I guess that's how you say his name. He used to be an MBH, and I've played him before, and if I remember right, he soundly thrashed me then. And there's a few reasons for that. Number one, he uses armies that I am not real fond of, but not only that, he's a good player. So from what I've noticed whenever I've played him, is that not only does he use the really large Ashigaru armies that I'm not really fond of, but he's also quite good at moving his troops around and knowing what to do. So whenever this battles, I mean, to be honest, I got rid of all my lone sword veterans except for a couple. I think I have 3 of them, and I figured he would have a lot of lone swords, and I don't really have a good answer to this right now, because most of my army is, yeah, I've changed up a lot of my veterans and everything. And one thing you can do is you can bring a lot of katana cav, but that's definitely a risk because you know, players who use these types of armies know that they have to have a couple units of spears, and then he's also brought some warrior monk cav in order to fight off any katana cav you bring. So the katana cav seems like the easy answer to these lone sword armies, but it's not, and it kind of depends. Like I said, if someone knows how to defend this type of army, then these armies are indeed quite powerful. So despite my, you know, unfondness for the type of army he uses, again, like I said, Zaraganis is a good player, and like I said, I remember playing him last time. I believe he's ranked pretty well, and well, ranking aside, because ranking doesn't always reflect everything. And if you take a look at it, one thing I like about what he's doing here is he did bring a gigantic, massive army. It's like 2,500 men, so whenever this battle started, I knew I didn't really have a prayer of winning. So yeah, let's take a look at his army. He's using a flanking force over here, and this is an interesting idea. And I think this is an interesting idea, or interesting way to take advantage of the massive amount of numbers he's brought. So he brings like a Yari Ashigaru, some Matchlock, and these aren't veteran Matchlock, so it's not like he's going crazy and one of his lone swords isn't veteran. And then he's got some Monk Cav. One of these guys is really veteran, so it has Hold Firm and Warcry. And then I have, over here, I've got 4 Monk Cav, and I mean, that's kind of good and kind of bad. And, you know, I think I make some mistakes using these guys. And if you look at the power of my army, it's really range. So range is the advantage I have over Zaraganis, but, and I also have a cav advantage, but the thing he has is numbers, and because of the strategy he's using, I have a couple of options here in order to try and get a one-up on him. I need to try and use my range to pick apart some of his men, and he's got this flanking force that's eventually going to show up on my flank, and I can't really do that. And he's got this monk cav that's coming back here, and I don't really want to reveal my cavalry till the right moment. I don't remember how many lone swords he's got, but he's got a lot of lone swords, and all of them have very good stats. So he's got an extremely clear infantry advantage. I think he's got, let's see, 8 of them over here, and then, like I said, 2 more in that other group of infantry. He's only got a couple of spears, but with his matchlocks and these spears and his monk cav, he could easily defend against a katana cav type attack. I mean, unless I had an absolute spam of them, which is always risky. Now, one thing I am going to do is I am going to go ahead and get the cav advantage, but really I've made a mistake here, and I hope you all recognize it. I'm playing right into what he wants me to do, which is to allow this flanking force to get behind me, and I don't really have enough units to allow it to happen. I do go ahead and ambush his cavalry back here, and even though one of his units is better than mine, the combination of all my units here plus the surrounding effect, I'll absolutely bushwhack his cavalry. And get away with relatively few losses. I mean, I'll have at least half of my cavalry left, which isn't bad considering how good one of those units was. So, like I said, I'm going to pull up here, and I just want to try and get some. I want to try and get some kills, draw his men forward. I really need to focus on taking out these matchlocks. But even if I do take out the matchlocks, he's still got 8 lone swords behind him. So it's like I said, I don't have the appropriate army for fighting this. And I should have pulled back all my units to here so that he couldn't outflank me with this force and take up a more defensive position. But to be honest, I have 1,000 less men than him, and I didn't really think that I had a chance, and so I was just like, you know, whatever. I'm just going to fight this battle and get what kills I could. And I wanted to show you all his army, and I know some of you will probably give him a hard time saying, he's just a lone sword spammer. Even if he wasn't spamming lone swords, I would have a hard time beating this guy. And, you know, if I did beat him, and I want you all to recognize that. And so that's part of the reason why I wanted to show him on here, is because he is a good player, and I don't consider myself to be one of the best players. So I just want you all to see it. And so while I'm focusing on the cav and everything, I don't move my units right either. I let my matchlock monks get caught. I don't use my spears to guard them. I don't get a charge off with a lot of my swords. So I make all kinds of mistakes, and he does good about getting as many men as he can over here to the flank. A lot of people with huge lone sword armies will just bring it right down the front. and that's not really the smartest way to use him. And it's good to see that he knows that. So here he's using that extra number advantage to get around the flank, and then check out this sweet monk cav hammer and anvil he gets on me. He whips these guys around real fast, knowing that the rest of my swords are busy, and he's able to get back in here, mess up my bows, get the hammer and anvil effect on my men, so you can see the morale's already waving. So he did a really good job of getting in here and ending this battle real fast, and catching me off guard while I was trying to focus elsewhere. And the only thing I could end up doing was trying to hold off his flanking force, but with spears and matchlocks, my monk cav's screwed. So all they're doing is buying me time, and no matter how much time they bought me, there's pretty much, with the way I handled things, no way I could hold up front. I had 4 sword units to his 8, and every last one of his was superior to mine. So yeah, I didn't use my range right. I picked a poor position on the battlefield, and although I did well in ambushing his cavalry and getting his cavalry out of there, that was about the only thing that I managed to do well. I really needed my cavalry to be running disruption on his swords and using my ranged advantage, but I didn't do so. So like I said, good game to Zaraganis. Hope you guys enjoyed watching that. Again, I know a lot of you may be the same as me, where you don't necessarily like big lone sword armies like what he brought, but the fact remains he is a good player, and I hope you all recognize that the way he set up his force there very much took advantage of the map, and he also used his lone swords in a way to destroy my army very fast by getting around the flanks and using that monk cav. And I also hope you all realize the reason why people use armies like that online, and it's because he is weak to cavalry in some ways. I mean, that's why he brings the monk cav, is to kind of help balance that off. So I mean, that is a weakness of those lone sword armies, and it's also weak to long-range bows. But what he's gambling on is that he can keep you disrupted long enough with your long-range element to get into close quarters combat, and if he can get into close quarters combat, he can most likely finish the job. One other very curious thing that I hope you noticed, this monk cav that had hold firm, he didn't end up getting to use it on them, but if you have a monk cav with Warcry and hold firm, and you get behind enemy lines and you hammer an anvil with the Warcry and then at the same time hit hold firm on your surrounding units, that's going to be devastatingly effective. So lone sword army or not, that's actually a very good unit, and I thought it was curious that he was using that. It does take quite a lot of time to get one, because I think they have to be level 9, and it requires, I think, 30 clan tokens in all to get Warcry and hold firm. But I'm telling you, that's a deadly effective combination, and I think it's a sign of a player who recognizes how to use a unit to good effect there. So good game to Zaraganis. That's not the first time he's beat me. Like I said, I wanted you all to see a good player in operation there. And regardless of whether you like the type of army choice he does, I think it's perfectly fine to recognize that he wants to be good at the game, and he understands how to pick his army accordingly. So, Heir of Carthage signing off for now. Stay tuned for the results screen, and I got another battle for you. Hey there YouTube, Heir of Carthage here, coming to you from the Kyoto map. And yes, I'm playing a siege battle. I decided to play some of these just because I hadn't played any in a long time, and I think there's a couple of achievements that go along with the siege battles. Like, I think if you win 10 as the attacker and win 10 as the defender, you get an achievement, and I kind of like to try and get all the achievements in the game I can. It's kind of fun to do that. I mean, I do that on Halo too, trying to get the achievements. So I'm defending Kyoto, and my opponent is RDH, and I brought I brought kind of a mix-up unit here. Now, a lot of times when people assault you in a large castle, they'll bring a piece of siege equipment like these fire-protecting mangonels he brought, and usually they'll just bring a crap load of swords and a few bows. Now, my opponent happened to bring a lot of Naginata samurai, which is fortunate for him, because had he brought nothing but swords, my katana cav would have come up here and wrecked half of his army before the battle could have even started. And you can see that he is indeed quite concerned about the katana cav over here that's menacing his flank, as well he should be. If I do get a hold of any of his soft targets with him, it will be a short fight. The katana cav will wreck them. Now, I do have a limited amount of funds, so using these guys, I kind of used them poorly in this battle. I played another battle before this where I used them a lot better, and actually did wreck a whole bunch of my opponent's sword troops and got them back in and dismounted them in my castle in order to have more effect. So let's talk about my opponent's army and the upsides and the downsides of it. He brought a ton of Naginata samurai, and he brought a few katana samurai as well. I think he's got 3 katana samurai. I'm trying to remember how many Naginata samurai. Looks like 4 up there, 5, 6, 7. I think he's got 7 Naginata samurai, 3 Or did I say 4 Katana Samurai? I think 3 Katana Samurai. His fire projecting Mangonel, which I disagree with the choice of that. And then he's got 3 bow units. I think 2 bow monks and his Daiki Samurai. Oh no, he's got an extra Naginata unit out here too. This was just kind of a test on my part. I kind of knew my Katana Cab would get thrashed, but I just wanted to go ahead and charge through these guys and kind of get a feel for whether or not I could get to the soft targets up here, and what kind of damage I'd cause. And I kind of forgot that Naginata have, if you look at the stats here, they've got a 15 bonus first cav, and I use them as a bonus first cav a lot. So it's one of those things where I shouldn't have done that, or at least I should have drawn him a little farther out and then dismounted and trashed this Naginata unit. I did get, looks like 33 kills on it, but I took massive losses too. I took about 60 losses. So the Naginata Samurai were killing me on a 2-for-1 thing there, even though I split right down the center of them with the Katana Cav. So Naginata units are best used as an anti-missile, anti-cav unit. They're really not very good though in a melee fight, and that's why I think I disagree with the type of army my opponent brought here. I can see the logic, because he's probably expecting that I bring a whole lot of missiles, but the problem is that a lone sword unit can easily defeat a Naginata Samurai in a siege type battle. Now, a vanilla lone sword versus a vanilla Naginata unit on open ground, it won't go as good for the lone sword, but you gotta remember the cost difference. I think the Naginata Samurai is 750 and the lone sword is 400. So for the cost difference, the lone sword does extremely well. Now, I think that as far as making the game a little more varied and fun, I think that I've heard some ideas that I liked, and one of them, one idea that someone threw out there, and I believe it was when I was talking with Ares, and I'm sure he's probably not the only one who's thought of it, but it was a good idea. I was talking to him about what they could do to fix the whole spam issue that's online right now, and one of the ideas was that you don't make Ashigaru units into veterans, and that kind of makes sense because the Ashigaru were kind of like either conscripts or forced into battle. They weren't professional soldiers, and thus they wouldn't really have any veteran status. So the fact that you can make a veteran unit out of a unit that was supposed to be a conscript and never really, constantly be used as a professional soldier does kind of, not make sense whatsoever. So it definitely would have been smart of CA to make it where you couldn't veteranize those units, but just increase their stats a little bit, but make it to where you can't make those units into a veteran unit. So I think if they increase their cost slightly, increase their stats slightly, or actually probably just increase their stats slightly, you don't even really have to mess with the cost. That way, there would be a little more balance there. So even though you could bring a whole lot of them, you couldn't make veteran units out of them, and they couldn't get the ridiculous stats that they end up getting. And another thing is, let's go ahead and discuss the patch. There is the upcoming patch, and I read what the patch notes were posted by that Craig TW guy or whatever on the Total War forum. I'll let you watch his fire projecting Mangonel's work on my my tower, which he can waste all the ammo he wants on those towers and gatehouses. It's not going to bother me. I have a plan for that. So yeah, I looked at the patch notes. There's a couple of things that I'm pretty happy with what they've done. Now here's the disclaimer before I start this whole discussion on the patch. Number one, you all hear me complain about the way CA does things sometimes. So does that mean I don't like CA or the Total War games? Absolutely not. I love the fact that CA makes these games for us. I'm just trying to give a little constructive criticism here. And, maybe someone's listening. Maybe they're not. So whether or not they listen, it doesn't really matter. So here's my constructive criticism. They took care of the lone sword situation. What I read, they're going to slow down the veteran progression of sword units. So sword units as a whole are getting a pretty significant nerfing. And then lone swords are going to be capped to 4. And then they also put some caps out there for bow monks, which I guess I can kind of understand, but not only did they cap them, they put 100 koku increase on their cost, which is pretty insane because they're pretty darn expensive as it is. If you look at the cost difference between a bow samurai and a bow monk, it's enormous. So I don't really understand that. I thought that was pretty stupid and pointless. I guess if they wanted to cap them, that's fine, because it is pretty tough when you have more than one unit of 200 range bow warrior monks against you, or more than 2 of them, I should say. So here's where my opponent's hoping his Naginata Samurai come in handy, but the thing is I didn't just bring bows, I brought matchlocks. So I brought a couple of long-range bow units. I brought my Daiki Samurai and my one of my bow monks, and so they're going to unleash on his bows to pin them down. And then I've got my Matchlock Ashigaru, and I didn't bring, if I did bring a veteran unit, it only has 1 chevron. I tried not to bring like super veteraned up ones because just a vanilla unit of Matchlock Ashigaru will get an insane number of kills in the walls. But it kind of helps balance out the fact that your opponent gets to bring a whole lot more army than you do. So I'm using my Matchlocks here in kind of an attritional battle. You can see my opponent is firing at my Matchlocks, and over here my Matchlocks are unleashing volleys onto his men as they approach the walls as well. So there's my Matchlocks up in the wall. You can see they have a very superior position to fire from, and it would indeed be quite devastating. Now, of course, all of this was just a ruse. I just wanted to come down here and cause as much damage to my opponent's advance as possible, and now I'm going to retreat back to the keep, and my beat-up Katana Cav are going to play a crucial role here that you'll get to see. Let's take a look down the street here. This will be kind of fun to get these different views. Yeah, so there's my men retreating back towards the keep, and they're going to be closely followed by his men, who you can see coming over the walls right now. And I'm going to need a unit to hold them off so that my units can properly retreat. And like I said, that's where the Katana Cav is going to come into play. And the pursuit is quite hot over here, actually. One of his Naginata Samurai is surprisingly keeping right on up with my Matchlock Ashigaru, and I really can't afford to lose those Matchlock Ashigaru. So I'm going to pull my Katana Cav up here, kind of just dismount them at the last second. These guys are going to die mounted or dismounted, to be quite frank, but as many kills as I can get with them, the better. And like I said, now they're serving their purpose just to hold things up, because check it out, while they're holding things up, my missile units are escaping back into the keep, where once in the keep they'll have unbreakable morale, and they'll also be close enough to my general that I can use stand and fight, so that's going to create a huge problem for my opponent. So what should my opponent have done to have a better chance against me? Number one, I think he should have brought hand mortars. And the first thing that he should have done was not wasted his time on my towers. He should have just sent his Naginata Samurai up here and climbed the walls. And he could have used his own bows and hand mortars to hold off any troops that I started to move towards him. And it would have been a lot more costly for me, and I would have had to keep my troops back here to begin with. Once that's done, he could have climbed the walls, captured the tower, everything like that. And then he could have pulled up with the hand mortars while I would have been in confined space here, and he could have dealt a lot of damage to me with the hand mortars. So the hand mortars would have definitely been a better unit for him in this case. And he probably should have brought a couple more long-range bows and just a couple of spear units rather than a lot of them, just a couple, in case I did what I did with my Katana Cav. You can see that you definitely don't want to be these Naginata Samurai right now. They're learning the hard way how Matchlocks are quite good from the wall. So yeah, they're getting hit with all kinds of missile fire on their retreat. So yeah, my opponent should have just brought a couple of spears, or possibly like a Yari Cav or something to protect against a Katana Cav. And then brought mostly swords, some bows, and then, like I said, the hand mortar unit. That would be his best bet. And what he would want to do is try and neutralize as many of my missiles as possible with his missiles, and then use his hand mortars to pick at my infantry from beyond the range of my own missiles. So that's what I would have done if I were him. Now, siege battles are quite different than just regular land battles, so, you know, I'm not super familiar with them. What I'm saying, there may be ways to beat that. I'm just saying that's what I would do based on what I see right here. Go ahead and zoom up on his approaching troops. That'll be kind of fun. So yeah, there's his troops approaching. Anyway, let's keep talking about the patch. So CA, I'm glad that you fixed the lone sword spamming situation. And just from the last battle that I posted, I think you all can see the power of those types of armies. And will that mean that there won't be some other kind of army out there that becomes extremely powerful? There's one thing I've learned about a patch is a lot of people expect it to change the fact that people are going to learn what the most powerful army is and use it all the time. I don't expect it to change that. I guess I'm just sick of that particularly powerful army being the lone sword army, because, you know, they're just like conscripts and peasants, and that's kind of frustrating. Let's take another view here for a second. Okay, this will be a good view. So here's his men attempting to climb the walls, and they're going to be taking a lot of fire. So yeah, like I said, it's going to change the fact that lone swords are the power army of choice right now. But I'm sure someone's going to find the new power army. I mean, it's only a matter of time till that works. And even though they put unit caps and stuff in, I can already see some serious issues that are probably going to be present. Plus, it seems like any time that CA introduces new units, there's always a lot of tweaking that has to be done. And they've already capped some of the units they're introducing, which makes me really wonder about, you know, exactly what they're going to be like. But on the optimistic side, I'm more than willing to just play the DLC when it comes out and see how it works. And you know, whatever I'm saying here, I may find to be untrue. So I'm just telling you what it looks like right now, and we'll see what actually happens when it comes out. Now, the unfortunate thing is, whenever this patch does come out, and the DLC, I am going to have to leave the day afterwards to go on a 3-day business trip. I'll be back that weekend, and then I have to leave the following week to go on a week-long business trip, so you won't be getting a whole lot of DLC videos out of me right away. I will try to make some when I'm back home for that weekend, and I'll tell you what I can about what has come out, or at least just try and give you some advice. So here you can see his Naginata Samurai. They're tough units, but versus swords, they're not going to do well, and even in real life, the Naginata wouldn't have been a very good weapon for this type of battle. The Naginata was definitely a better weapon for an open kind of single opponent engagement. In a group formation, the Naginata probably would have been a lot less useful if you didn't have room to wield it properly or to get some momentum going on it or anything. So yeah, that's my opponent, I think, could have picked a better army here, but he did alright with what he had. It's just that I definitely had a system of attrition set up to where I would be able to really wear down his troops before they ever got a chance to meet me in melee. And then, of course, I'm going to have the morale advantage, so that's why I just brought Ashigari troops, because wasting my money on Katana Samurai wouldn't have been real smart here. Just because my funds, I think, were 6,600, and I think he gets, you know, at least double that, which makes sense, because the attacker has a tougher job. So anyway, I hope you just enjoyed my little discussion about the patch here. I do think it's going to change things slightly. It's probably going to make swords slightly less destructive. It's going to make bow monks more expensive and harder to use. And it's going to take away lone sword spam. Now, depending on how they change the upgrade qualities, lone sword may still be a tough unit, and with 4 of them, you can still, if they don't change their stats too much, which it sounds like they may, if they don't change their stats too much, you can still hold off quite a bit with 4 units of lone swords. And you know, it still makes a cheap element of your army with numbers, where you can still spend more money on the bow monks that they made more expensive, or matchlock units and stuff like that, which they also made a couple of those more expensive. So from what I see so far, there's a couple of units that are going to be getting more powerful because of the patch. I think bow samurai are going to be a lot more useful after the patch. I think matchlock samurai are going to be a lot tougher and cost-effective after the patch. There's a few other things like that, and I also think Naginata units are going to be a little bit tougher after the patch if they nerf the swords the way it sounds like they will. Also, some of you may be happy to know that they're nerfing Fugu Cook and World Weary, so if you're ever sick of having -4 melee attack and everything else because of Fugu Cook and World Weary, and at the same time while you're facing a gigantic horde of 30 attack lone swords, that will be changing. So the patch is going to change things. I'm cautiously optimistic to see how it changes things. I don't really think CA did this in the best way possible, but then again, I haven't played it yet, so I will leave that judgment till then. Stay tuned for the results screen. Hope you enjoyed it. Sorry it's been a while since I posted some videos. I will be posting as many as I can in the near future. Eric Carthage signing off for now.